you. JC, we got a guest here today. Look at it.
Hello.
Sato, how are you?
Good, how are you?
How are you now?
Everything's fine.
Good, and you?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good, and you?
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. This is an important episode.
Yeah.
You know, JC and I have sort of just talked a little bit about initial startup of Launch, and kind of like what we like to do as our first steps. We thought that bringing you in for this next episode would be good because we could talk about the mechanics of some of the equipment that you're going to use. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
My story. Well, let's see, this is my 34th year in the green industry.
Wow.
And my 18th year here at the Aggie. So, I am...
knows his stuff.
I hope so. So my job here is to take care of all of the equipment and vehicles and grounds equipment, farm equipment, various breakdowns, preventative maintenance, acquiring new equipment, and I help support also the students, you know, in their projects and get them set up for the things that they need. I started out right in high school. I worked for a place that's still in business. I worked for Morgan Power, and worked there for several years, probably about 6 years. And that's how I got my feet wet. I'm also I'm a graduate of vocational education. I went to Silver Lake.
And I think what I think would be interesting is, like, for someone like JC, how has the equipment changed over your 18 years here?
Well, like everything else, technology is driving into everything, and now with emissions, that's playing a big role now, and it's going to continue to play a big role moving forward. So smaller, tighter, confined space, you know, things are getting shoved into smaller places. A lot more electrical than they used to be.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, with the fuels now.
I mean, just with this piece of equipment right here, the electrical in this tractor.
Yeah, some of these tractors have more onboard sensors and computers than a car does.
Yeah.
But yet, some of these tractors now are burning cleaner than some of the cars. So it's a trade-off. But yeah, so the equipment has changed a lot. A lot of consolidation of various lines of, you know, so some of the things are, you know, old staples in the business are continuing to be made, but they're made by different players now than what you're used to seeing. So there's a lot more smaller companies out there making more niche equipment. So you kind of still have the variety of equipment from the big players, and then the new stuff that's coming in a lot more with renovation. Not just rip it up and rototill it anymore. It's slice seeding and aerations and work with what you have, with the tools that you have. So yeah, there's been a lot of changes, but I think the biggest one in my time here so far has been the fuel.
Yeah.
Fuel has played a major role for all contractors, even in the power sports business. So when they introduced alcohol into, you know, the fuels, that you couldn't just let stuff sit on the shelf anymore. You had to use it within a certain time. And guys, and it eats up where alcohol is also considered a solvent.
Right.
It's been playing a lot of problems with the end user. With, hey, I put my lawn tractor away. I put my lawn tractor away in the fall, and in the spring it doesn't start, and I didn't touch it.
Right.
You know, so that's because things don't have the shelf life that they used to. So that's been a big challenge for landscapers, homeowners, and including myself.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all the electric stuff coming out? Because that's obviously something that's changed.
And especially in, like, the homeowner stuff,
Yep.
like, which what we're trying to do is help out, you know, the viewer, the staff, the
It's nothing to be
common guy.
afraid of. The thing to keep in mind is that unlike the battery-operated cars and things where they run extremely high voltages, the electrical that's in, like, tractors and lawnmowers and things like that works off. It's not the type of electrical that can zap you and hurt you.
Right.
Like anything else, you can get a poke if you touch the wrong thing, but it's not to the same level as AC electrical. But we're going to see more and more of that. They're already coming out with battery-operated lawnmowers for that clean burn, and backpack blowers and trimmers and the cordless front.
I have a 21-inch lawnmower and a string trimmer, and I love, like, I think it's, like, because I've been in the industry a long time, and you know, you and I do a lot of the servicing of my equipment here at school, and I've just gotten really tired of the whole oil, like changing oil, changing filters. On my battery powered stuff, I just like put the battery in there, and you know, all I have to do is
no
change
stink,
the blades.
no smell, no mess,
Yeah.
nothing that's gonna tip over and kill the grass.
And I originally wanted to do it because I thought it'd be easy for my kids. Like I wanted my kids to say, "Oh, I'm gonna go mow the lawn," because I remember the hardest thing for me as a kid was just doing the whole startup. It didn't work out that way. They still don't mow the lawn. I'm still doing it right now.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. But I think every man should mow his own lawn. You know, it's a good, like,
Let's
you
get
put
it.
on a terrific podcast like this one, and you just get out there and you push your.
You should talk to Kenny Collins about that.
Kenny Collins, your father.
You should move on.
Ah, no, he's got you. Hey, this is a budding entrepreneurship you've got.
That's room and board.
But if I'm a new homeowner, and I'm going to get my 21-inch mower, my blower, and my trimmer, is electric the way to go right now?
It's not. Well, it's one of these things now. If you're going to be a brand new homeowner and you don't have any power equipment at all, so you're going to be buying for the first time, this might be the time to just make that jump. So you're going to be stuck with something that eventually, it's not going to get obsolete tomorrow. You know, the rules have got to change and things, but I don't see us being too far away from when you almost have to have an emissions ticket for your lawnmower. You know, I mean, it wouldn't put it past.
Well, I know they're trying to push, like, I think in Brookline,
Backpack blowers.
they don't want it, but it's not an emissions thing, it's more of a noise nuisance.
Right.
But Newton as well. But in California,
They've banned all.
two-cycle engines because of emissions.
Right. So that's a big extreme because that affects so many different industries. That's not just the green industry. That's anything, that runs gas powered. And they haven't got the bugs worked out of there yet. They threw that thing out there, but then you got standby generators, for hospitals, and there's some things that's still going to have to run on fossil fuels, at least in the meantime. But back to what you were asking about the equipment for the homeowner or the person started up. It's to look at it a couple different ways. As battery operated equipment gets more and more out in the field, the cost will eventually come down. And nobody really considered it for a while because it was very expensive, but it was a cleaner alternative. And it was new to the market, so a lot of people, some embraced it and taken off, and they didn't have a good start, and some have taken it and, their whole fleets. There's companies now that they advertise like that, being environmentally friendly and that they use all electric or all, and that's fine.
And I've even seen like the 52-inch deck or like 70-inch deck. Didn't you show? We went to the national show and you showed me.
Yeah,
like,
I went to the GIE in Kentucky, and I know Toro made one. Mean Green.
A-Lots.
They've had one for a while.
A-Zod or A-Lots or something like that.
They're all like even Skag came out with one. Right? They pretty much all have one, and they're all autonomous too. Which they're all coming out with autonomous ones too. So it's definitely
the autonomous stuff is really neat.
Pretty much, but the rest of the vehicle hasn't changed.
Right.
So it's just basically just taking that power pack, and what was rotating it, the shaft rotating it, and taking it from fossil fuels with diesel, gas, everything, and just putting an electric motor there. And then you've got also the weight and storage of the batteries. So there again, that goes with that initial cost. So when you buy all that stuff, it's probably typically going to be more than your traditional lawnmower that you would buy. But one of the things you want to do is where I'm going to give a little plug for power equipment dealers. There's lots of big box stores. And there's lots of people in the corner want to say, there's Amazon. And we all know that we can get a good savings on Amazon. But what you lack is when you have to ask those questions. There's only so many questions you can ask in getting the feedback versus dealing with somebody who that's their specialty. And they're there to, that's their business, is power equipment. So when you get a local dealer, the local dealer is only going to be as good as how much you utilize them. You know what I mean? And they're educated in that product line that they're selling. And so they've answered a lot of those questions. And you're just one of many people that come in their doors every day, and they can usually get you up and running with, the questions. So they know the product line, they know what they have to stock for pots, and they ask those questions. How big is your yard? You want to buy something that's too big, and you want to buy something that's underpowered either that's going to wear out prematurely. And same thing with the no blowers, you know. You might have a piece of property that only has a handful of trees. You might have one that's a forest in your yard, and you really need a blower. So those questions, you know, you tell them what you have for this, just like, you know, a generator. But
And that leads into what we're trying to answer is for the homeowner and their equipment, especially doing their lawn equipment. If you reach out to a dealer, like there's a couple around here, like Norfolk Power is a great one, Cleves, Stewart's in Holbrook. What they also do is provide you with service on your yearly maintenance.
Correct.
So I think one of the biggest things a homeowner struggles with is, especially with like a fuel-driven mow, is your service. Like you're changing the plugs and changing the blades and you know giving it an oil change if you need to. You know, like do fuel filters and stuff like that. So if you're not inclined to do that, or you don't have the tools to do that, it's great to just bring it to a dealer. They take care of it, and you have to prepare for that though. Like you can't just show up on March 1st or show up like April 1st and be like, I need my mower service. So you get it in early and.
Yeah, as long as you prepare for when you're going to be without it, you don't want to. And then there's people right behind you doing the same thing. But there again too is when you have a regular. When you have a regular dealer, they're going to get to know you, and they're going to know your habits and as you interact with them. So then also, if I was a dealer and you bought a whole bunch of stuff from me, and then I was a lay person coming in off the street, I'm going to take care of my customer. You know what I mean? It's service oriented, just like in the green industry. You're going to go and take care of your customers that want that little extra work done on the property. You're there every single week. Well, same thing with them. You know, it's like, I see them, a couple times a year. They come in and get their parts, and you're going to get that level of service. We're a service-oriented industry. You know what I mean? So, that's kind of going to be the trade-off on that. And like you said, you don't have to be a mechanic to go work on a machine, and none, really mechanically inclined. These are basic things that the general operator needs to know. To maintain, whether you bought it for yourself or you're working for somebody and you're doing this for the owner of the company, it's part of your job, or they're working for you or you as the operator. So you maximize your equipment, you maximize downtime, that and that's going to be the key. Time is money.
Yeah, you and I always talk about operator responsibility. If you're the operator, you have some sort of responsibility to make sure the equipment is running properly. Like you can't just be on a machine, hear a noise, and say, "Oh, I'm going to turn my music up so I don't hear the noise."
That's what my wife does when the brakes are going. She just turns the radio.
I guess the main questions I think the homeowner wants to know is, if you do have a push mower, what type of winter maintenance would you advise them to get?
So we're going to go off of a fossil fuel.
Yeah.
So for now, some people will tune up their mower in the fall, and it's ready to go in the spring. There's nothing that says you can't do it after you get done doing leaves.
Exactly.
To do all that, and then you beat the rush. And then you're out there cutting the grass and cleaning up everything while everybody's parked at the power equipment store.
And here, I'll give you an example. Like, I think JC's more of a commercial base. Like his equipment. I think JC, it probably does a lot of his own servicing anyways, right? Do you bring any of your stuff to?
I did. I brought my stuff to Stewart's just because they do Skag. But I try to do as much as I can. But I had a hydraulic leak. Probably should have brought it here. But it did cost a little bit of money. But it's just sometimes things get busy.
It's
and
convenient.
you just can't take care of it. Like I'm not at the point where I get a mechanic
On staff.
But that's good. That's good operator responsibility, right there. That's showing good responsibility. But I think for a homeowner, I think most of these people that are watching this either have a little drive on, like a Craftsman tractor, probably with a 3-blade deck, or they just have a push mower. I don't think a lot of homeowners have like a stander or
I think
maybe they have a 0-turn, something like that.
I think the most to get, I know it's the Aggie, so maybe a couple farm people, but maybe some bigger tractors. But I would assume they're
Well, you also have homeowners that do require landscape grade commercial equipment because they have that size. I mean, it's, if you have an acre and a half worth of ornamental grass, it's an acre and a half of ornamental grass, whether you owned it or you do it for somebody else, it's still that amount of stuff. But that's, again, you know, going back to what I was saying is that you're gonna be operating a piece of equipment that has been purchased under those questions that were asked of how much stuff to do. So you're not having an underpowered machine trying to cut a lot of grass, and it's only gonna give you half the life expectancy.
Yeah.
As far as getting this stuff either ready or stored away for the winter time.
Yeah, maybe start with the 21 inch.
So your typical lawnmower, so you're gonna use that on a typical riding lawnmower or walk behind mower is gonna get used anywhere from 20 to 30 times in a season.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
whether it's a
30
weekly,
cuts.
30 cuts, and with cleanup and things like that. So if you were gonna put it away for the winter time, number one is clean it. Okay, they don't like clean, you don't wanna store it in your garage with all the stuff all over it. But that stuff will end up harboring mold and everything else with the grass clippings underneath. And then that can make an unhealthy atmosphere, especially if it's in your shed or your garage. But getting that all cleaned up, so then you don't have to deal with the rust factor.
Yeah.
Anything that's encapsulated and it has rust, it's gonna keep rusting. And with grass clippings, the alkali in your clippings there, that will accelerate rust. So you could have a perfectly good shiny lawnmower underneath rotting from underneath it.
Yeah.
So keeping it clean is number one. Number two is we talked, for the ones that are gonna have the fossil fuels, we've come down to one or two things now. You either or three things. You either buy the fuel, and it's a lot more money, that does not have the alcohol in it. And you can find it at like your Tractor Supplies, your big box stores, and what it is it's the old MBTE gas.
Yeah.
And because the 10% alcohol that they're putting in the gas now, most of the components when these machines were built were not designed to run on alcohol. So the rubber gaskets and the seals and everything deteriorate from that. So long-term storage exposed to fuel is one of the biggest problems. So how do you combat that? You either fill it up all the way to the top with fresh fuel, treat it, there's treatments out there to keep the fuel still fresh, but keep it top not full. Or you deplete everything, you drain everything out so it's dry. If you have an in-between, you have warming and cooling, warming and cooling. What does that start?
So you're saying at the end of the year, make sure all your fuel's out.
You either, like I said, you're gonna go.
Oh, you
you're
can
gonna
fill
go.
it all the way out.
You can either use the alternative fuel,
Okay.
which doesn't have the alcohol in it, or two, you're gonna fill it all the way up to the top. What I mean is, your filler tank, up to the top, or three, you drain everything.
Yeah.
So you either have it with a different fuel in it, you're putting it all the way to the top, or you're depleting. And why would you do that? Well, with the warming and cooling, even with a machine in your garage, you'll get the warming and cooling effect, and that will cause condensation.
So you get moisture in the.
Right. And for anybody who knows that alcohol loves water.
Right.
Okay. So it is attracted to that water. So it pulls away from the blend. So now you have a situation where the fuel is not as flammable, or it's at different levels. All right. So then now you can't really operate that. By having it all the way to the top, there is no void for condensation to go and then roll down, because it's all in there. If it's dry, well then there's nothing to attack, because there's nothing in there.
Right.
So those are the two kind of things that you can do. Like I said, either one or the other.
So in the fall, and when you put it away, fill it all the way up, or run the fuel out.
Or run the fuel out.
And then if you for some reason leave the fuel in there,
Treat
in
it.
this spring, either drain it out and dispose of it properly, and then
Correct.
start fresh.
Correct.
But don't start your machine with the old fuel in it.
Unless it's been treated
Yeah.
with the proper treatment for its sitting. Now, what's considered sitting? Anytime probably more than 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of the standard rule is anything that's starting to look into longer term storage, especially when it's going out every single week in the mowing season. So that is the thing, the fuel situation, the cleaning and the fuel, and then make a list. Walk around it, look at the machine, and see what looks out of place, out of order, and then get that stuff on order. We've learned now with all this, with the COVID and everything, about supply chain and getting parts. You might want to get that stuff on order, so it will come in even if it comes in the wintertime. you're gonna be ready to go in the spring. You don't have to wait those long
Preparation, owner responsibility.
Right. And then you can do a full tune-up on it if you wanted to, and then you're ready for the spring. Or you basically park it, and then you can do that in the spring.
Yeah.
So
fuel, very important.
fuel's very
The
important.
next would be, so on a 21-inch mower,
Clean it.
clean it.
Yeah.
So that's the fall thing, clean it. But in the spring, you're not changing. The only thing you're changing on it is the blades.
Well, you're changing them or you're sharpening them depending on what your situation is.
So Jack and I talked about your first cut, using your old blades on your first cut, and then either changing your blades out or taking your blades to someone to get them sharpened, and then, but after your first cut.
And the reason why you're doing that is, we're us in New England there, when you have the snowplows and everything, we all have seen chunks of asphalt on the lawns.
Yeah.
And if you started with a brand new blade, and you start whacking rocks and chunks of asphalt, well, you've done.
That how important prepping the lawn was.
Right.
And this being like a turf podcast, I think it all kind of comes back to the health of the turf. And if you don't have a lead blade, and you're, it's like cutting the grass with a butter knife, and it's more of a tear. And you'll see it. You can probably put up a clip of a grass
Insert
blade.
clip of it's called marshalling.
Okay. Marshalling.
It looks kind of like what do we always say? It looks like Bart Simpson's head.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like when you tear it. So
You'll get white or yellow tips.
yeah, and it leads to disease and stuff like that. So the sharper your blades are, the better quality turf you're gonna have.
And Tom, I try to stick around the 10-hour mark, but how often would you recommend changing, replacing, or sharpening blades, whatever you're doing?
So I guess it all depends on the lawn or lawns itself. So it's hard for a landscape contractor to say when to do that because all your lawns will be lush and green.
Yep.
Okay, and you're not going to have too much wear because it's just hitting nice soft grass.
Yeah.
But you could have one plush green. The second one is a sand lawn.
Yep.
So sand is the enemy. Sand and rocks are the enemy for that defined edge on the blade.
Yeah.
The more that we keep having abrasives hit it, the more rounded it's going to be, and then we're going to get that tear effect.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of judge your accounts where you might, do you have to change? Do you have to sharpen them by the end of the day? Well, if you had a lot of bad lawns, yeah, because you're going to wreck the good lawns with the blades from the old ones. So it's really going to be situation, of site, what's going to dictate how much wear did your blades get. I know some guys that can make them last most of the week because of their accounts, and other guys like, I got to change them out every morning.
Right.
And there's a difference between touching up a blade and really grinding the blade.
Yeah.
So if the longer that you run blades after a day, and you're going to go back and hit another account that's very similar to the last one that wore them down, you keep making that stock more rounded around, which means that you're going to have to spend more time with the grinder to get that back into shape. Whereas if you're just doing it at the end of the day, you're just touching it up.
I find the blades is funny. It's like a funny kind of antidote to like the homeowner, Like I've had friends of mine whose dad has told me, "What do you mean you sharpen your blades? I haven't sharpened my blades in 10 years."
Yep.
He's running the same mower. But then someone like Jack, who's really into it, wants to do it every 10 hours.
Sure.
I think we do it here at school because you and I are doing it mainly. And we had Adlin do it. We taught Adlin this year.
Everybody gets taught.
Yeah. We try to do it. I think we try to do it around the 2-week mark. I think you'd like to do it every week, but we try to shoot for 2 weeks.
And the other thing is with the determination of the blades. Okay, one of the other indicators is lack of horsepower, because the more dull the blades are, the motor's going to work harder to try to rip instead of nice slice cut. You know what I mean? So, just like that steak, the knife that cuts meat, they're always, they're sharpening right before they cut the meat, and that's so they have a nice clean cut. It's the same thing. If you have to put more effort and labor into cutting that,
it's going to wear down.
It's going to wear on your engine. It's going to tax those components. So, there's a benefit to maintaining sharp blades. It's a process, but there's a lot more benefits than.
And I think the prepared person, this is something you should probably look into, is the prepared person has a set of blades backed up, right? So what he does is
you're changing out.
Yep, he changes them out, right? Then he takes those blades when he has a free moment and he sharpens them. In the meantime, he's mowing with clean blades.
Like NASCAR.
Yeah.
Changing up the tire. you know, and you'll deal with the tires later, you know?
Yep.
But if you're just running a 21-inch mower, if you did it once during the growing season, I think you'd be better off.
Yeah.
If you could do it once a month, that's great. But if you can do it one time during the season, I think you'll find good
Just don't forget there's a blade under there.
Yeah.
It does need something.
I would say less about a time frame for like a homeowner, but more about just looking at the signs, looking at
Yes.
the top of the grass blade. Like, I think one thing I notice when it's getting time to change them, I have to do a lot of double cutting because I like to move quick on them.
Yeah.
So I'll go through them quick and I'll notice the little stragglers. And
Yep.
It's like, oh. Wait
So
a
those
minute.
stragglers, what are the stragglers usually? Because that's the hardest one for the blade to cut. What type of grass? Fescue.
The fescue.
Because it's more wire, it's ropey, it's thin.
Oh, yes.
So a lot that you can also tell is when you got those lawns that have multiple different varieties in them, you'll see that the Kentucky Blue and the Rye, they're all cut. And then you see all these little stragglers kicking around all over the place because they get lobbed over. It needs a blade to kind of, to cut it. And I've had customers say, hey, why is it leaving grass behind? Well, you're using butter knife,
Yeah.
you need something sharper than that.
Or a dating line. Won't even go
Yeah,
down.
those are annoying.
Just stick right
Same
up.
thing, it's hollow stick, so.
So for a 21-inch mower, other than the blades and your fuel, that's pretty much all the maintenance you need.
For putting away for the wintertime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even for a startup, a 21-inch mower will have oil.
You have an air filter,
And air filter,
you have an air filter, you have a spark plug.
plugs.
You have, and some have a fuel filter, some don't.
Yeah.
The blade, the
So-
wheels,
So
the handles,
for the
cables.
for the average guy,
Mhm.
if they did blades,
Oil.
air filter, and oil.
That covers most of it.
Yeah. Now, someone who's driving a tractor is a little bit more expensive because
There's more lubrication points,
Yeah.
multiple blades,
multiple blades. So you have three,
more belts,
a belt driven.
several belts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you'd have belts. Yeah, there's one this way and one this way.
right. And then you have one for the transmission or pump.
Right.
And you can typically have a larger engine than a 21-inch lawnmower.
Right.
Which sometimes can be multi-cylinder, so you're
Yeah.
talking two
A
of
Kohler
everything.
engine.
Right, so you're talking an engine oil filter,
Yeah.
you're talking about multiple spark plugs. So there's a couple, just because it's a larger engine to service.
But the same thing sort of translates to the 21-inch. The same thing you do on a 21-inch, you still have to do to your rider. More extensive,
Mhm.
right? But you're doing oil, air, plugs, blades, right? On a tractor, you're doing oil, plugs, blades, air filters,
Belt tension,
and belts.
brakes,
Yeah.
making sure the parking brake works, There's the safety aspect of all of them too.
Yeah.
And, that's the other thing. At any time, though people might think that they're a pain, whether it's a 21-inch lawnmower or it's a tractor, whether it's a spring or it's the fall, always make sure that your safety system is up to par.
Yeah.
When you walk, if the blades are on, you walk away, it shuts the blades off.
Yes.
Or if it's in gear, and when, yeah, it's a pain because we all do it, but it takes an extra second to put it in neutral or release the handle. That never compromise, of the safety aspect, because it's there for a reason.
Safety has no seasons, for sure.
That's right.
And what's the biggest thing that you're taught here at school? In operation of any equipment, what's the first thing you get taught?
It's a good question. I don't know where you're getting at.
I bet you Tom knows.
Like that.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I thought the question was him
Yeah.
also.
Very.
What's the thing we instill in you no matter what pieces of equipment that you hop on? What's the first thing that we always drive home?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Ding dong.
Maintenance check.
Well, daily maintenance check, right? And with that is part of the safety aspect. Working safe.
So the daily maintenance check is something you walk around your equipment, make sure the tires are good. You make sure everything's like. They'd like you to check your oil every day, right? You take a dipstick in there and we could do a whole episode just on how you check oil. These guys would love the Tom Casado oil checking technique.
Well,
It's gotta be level. It's gotta be level.
Well, unfortunately, none of these things. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff is streamlined into a lot of the same ways to do things, but with different manufacturers have different ways.
Yeah.
And so you could have had a machine all these years, and you finally went down to Lowe's or you went somewhere and you bought a new machine. Well, look, we talked about technology's changing and things else, you know, so have dipsticks.
Yeah.
You know, you've got some engines out there that you don't even have to drain the oil. It's all within the oil filter.
Yep.
And you twist the oil filter off and it's the oil, it's the filter, it's everything, you know, all one. That's just one type, you know. It doesn't make it the best, but it's just one type of many that's out there for servicing.
So the one big thing I would suggest to anybody who has a lawnmower is to get your operator's manual, read your operator's manual, follow the information, and seek help if you need it.
Yeah, create a little file, you know, or even if it's an index card that has the, you know, rather than hanging onto the container or whatever, you know, a little cheat sheet that says, yep, it takes a quart of oil. The lawnmower blade is this part number.
Yeah.
You know, what you can get out of the manual.
Yeah, like the ones you have.
Right, and then that way
You have it laminated. That thing's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a little overkill, but
Yeah.
you know, when you get dirty hands all the time, it doesn't last too long if you don't laminate it.
But we just used it this week.
Right, right, and that's kind of, we say, you know, time's money. You know, even if it's your own personal, even if it has, money's not related to it. But we're all trying to cram, get the lawn done on a Saturday because we have other things to do.
Right.
We're busy. So by having some of those quick little things, you know, like the spark plug is this number and the blade is this one. So then when you're out and about doing your errands, yeah, I gotta loop over and get a new blade. You already know the part number. You're not trying, where did I put the manuals? You know,
Right.
you know, it's kind of that quick thing because you're gonna have the machine for a while.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What kind of line do I run on my weed whacker? You know, what's the part number of that mix oil container? You know, so there's nothing really standardized anymore because there's different manufacturers. There's 4-cycle engines. There's 2-cycle engines. You know, so you can't just. There's not one cookie cutter thing. You have to really pay attention now more than ever. That is part of the thing. Getting back to your thing about the changes.
Responsibility.
All with metals being used and things like that, we've changed antifreezes, we've changed the type of oils, and nothing is the same anymore. You really have to pay attention. The operator's manual is probably the most important key for you and your machine to get acquainted with one another.
Yeah.
And all the things. And yes, there's a lot to read. And the first thing out of all the books is safety.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend that everybody reads it because complacency kills.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's important you read all these things. And I don't care if you've been in the business or you've been doing this all your life. If you pick up one thing, you know, and that could be the one that saved your life, or saves an eye or an ear or whatever.
Or your kids' lives.
Or the kids' lives, or a bystander, or anything else. Or you promoting it to somebody else to keep an eye open for something. It's a culture. Safety is a culture. You know.
You getting all these cliches Tom and I are throwing out?
Oh yeah.
Safety has no seasons.
That's right. It doesn't know anything, but
Well, this was fun.
yeah.
I'm sure once we start reading the comment section, that people will be asking for more. in-depth
Click
stuff.
that button.
Yeah, smash the button.
Smash the button. Ring the bell.